Hello, and welcome to the director's commentary for The Flame and the Flood. My name is Forrest Dowling, and I was the designer on the game, and you're going to be hearing a bunch from me throughout the game, wherever you see these little glowing cassette tapes. First off, I wanted to introduce some of the other voices that you're going to be hearing from. So without further ado, let me hand it off to Sync.
Hey, I'm Scott Sinclair. I was the art director on the game and a founder at the Molasses Flood.
And my name's Gwen. I was also a founder at the Molasses Flood, and I did the animations, the effects, and so forth for the game.
Hi, I'm Chad, and I'm also a founder of the Molasses Flood, and I am the environment artist on the game.
My name is Damian Isla. I was one of the two engineers on this project, and I focused on a bunch of the river generation, the AI, some control stuff, the Mac port, all kinds of things. With only two engineers, you end up having to cover a lot of bases.
So anyway, without further ado, feel free to run around this opening camp, look for the cassettes, frob them, as we say in the game design world, and listen to the commentary. This is the opening camp. We call this Camp Pinewood. This is kind of the continuation almost from the menu, which I think is kind of where the camp actually starts, and that was something that early on we were trying to do, is join the menu with the game.
Trying to make the main menu a piece of the narrative, actually have some meaning, and kick off our mysterious story where you get a little glimpse of this unknown dog, Aesop, and this backpack, and how that's actually delivered to your player character. And I really wanted to have that be an extension of the starting island and the initial quest, the main menu, that is.
Yeah, one thing that we wanted to do right at the start is kind of, you're always looking to raise questions and to give the player something to think about, while also giving them enough information to drive them forward. And I think that that's sort of like the big driving goal of these early moments, with the dog, the fire, the skeleton, the bag, the radio, was just, okay, so you're alone, you're in the woods, you've got this radio, there's a signal, but you don't know what it is, and there's this mystery, like, where did this dog come from? There's a glimpse at the backpack, and it's got this patch on it that, if you've played all the way through the game, you'll know what that means in the end. That was sort of where we started out, with trying to kind of raise all these questions while giving you just enough kind of meat to get you rolling. So that was sort of one of the big goals.
Gave us an interesting skin for those necessary evils, like the loading screens and streaming time and whatnot. That those bits and pieces along the way to the player finally getting control of the character for the first time, like had a bit of meaning.
so there was the narrative goals with Camp Pinewood, and then there was also just straight up functional goals in that we needed to squeeze a whole lot of kind of training and orientation for the player into this area, and there's a number of different ways that we did that, probably some more elegant than others. Like there's definitely tutorial screens that fire off, which as a designer I'm not super fond of, but at the same time there was like one of the issues with a survival game is you need to get so much information into the player's head so quickly. Like it's kind of hard to have a slow ramp up when right off the bat, like what your body needs doesn't really change over time. Like immediately you always need to, stay warm and eat and whatnot. And we balance things so that some of these things are not as pressing early on, but you kind of need that information up front. So yeah, we've got these prompts that pop up, but also we tried to just create situations, even just in this little space, that gave you an opportunity to learn things. Like a late addition that I ended up putting in was related to people not really figuring out how to craft and cook things, which is like a key part of survival in this game. So now the first time that you run through this camp, and only the first time, I ended up spawning a couple pieces of corn that you could collect with some tutorial messages to instruct you how to go to the fire and cook an ash cake, which is like a super good piece of food for you to have. But that was like an example, I guess, of something that was a super late addition when we saw, oh, here's the thing that nobody's really, or a huge amount of people are not figuring out and are being frustrated by. So we ended up adding that in.
I think the identity of the summer camp also lends itself to just a natural way to broadcast some of these basic verbs and goals to a player through elements in the environment. Camper training. Not to say that it was a replacement for meta pop-ups 100%, but that was our intent, was to let that environment be a little bit more dense with information graphics and things that fit the identity of a summer camp.
Yeah, well, so the all the signage around there, right, is like...
Yeah, attempting to double up on the meta screen, or actually give players a thing to click on that would allow them to pick and choose what information was put in front of them.
Pinewood is one of the most special environments in the game for me. I think it's our oldest environment that stayed in the game. Like, we built a version of it for Kickstarter, and it became kind of our staging area for all of our new assets over time. When the new foliage and the new trees, cabins, all of that came in. The iteration on how to light and what to do with the atmosphere, I think there are hundreds of different versions that we could go back to of Camp Pinewood, and I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out.
Yeah, I think it's an example of the identity and character that we kind of wanted to place onto every location in the game, but that became tougher with procedural generation and the scope of the project. But
right,
yeah, I think it's a great example of a place, with an identity.
Yeah, it's kind of our
and its own character.
What we were hoping to reach, and I think some of the other bespoke locations got closer to that.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
In the campaign mode, definitely. It did become a challenge, I think, to preserve that and also figure out the amount of tutorial and design elements that we needed to sort of cram in there after the fact. But, so goes game development.
Watching people play, the first thing I sensed when watching playtesters play the game was in the opening camp they immediately fell in love with the dog. And I think that's part of the narrative work that Sync did early on, even from the Kickstarter. We had this scene where Aesop would drag this bag over to you and you would pet Aesop, and then Aesop would kind of playfully chase you around, and in the entry camp in the opening area, Aesop was always really happy all the way through until you embark on the dock, and you have this moment where you pet the dog on as you start your journey. This built a lot of closeness between your character, Scout, and Aesop the dog, and I think that actually resonated with people pretty well. I think that was something we were pretty successful with.
I remember our goal related to that initially was to consider the player character as a three-part entity. You have Scout, the dog, and the raft, and wanting players to quickly feel like that combination of pals was the character, was your player, that the dog and the raft were a prime extension of your character.
And as things go awry in the game, the raft gets dinged up, and as well as you get dinged up, but Aesop's always by your side, your loyal dog. I was pretty happy with how Aesop turned out. I think he's a pretty lovable companion.